Hey class, Prof JC here, and I really appreciate the work that we're doing this week where we're talking about this idea of vision. Again, for those of you who know me, you know that this is something that it's something that's very important to me. We've talked a lot about that, your PV, your PVM. If you take nothing away from your time with me, the curly-haired professor, my hope is that you would remember that principles, values, purpose, vision, mission. You get those right, I promise you, the rest of your life gets better. You get those right on a personal level, your life gets better. You get those right on an organizational level. Your leadership is going to be much easier, right? All you have to now do is just implement. You know your principles, you know your values, you know your purpose, you know your vision, you know your mission. And today we're talking about this idea of vision, right? Where are you going as a leader? And that's what, when we define that, your purpose is why you exist. Your vision is where you are going as a leader. And so we want to talk about that just a little bit today. Where are you going as a leader? What are you doing? What is your vision? All of these things are incredibly important. So the book gives us examples on how we can do this. Okay, so I want to talk about that, and then I want to turn to an article, because as you're thinking about your vision, you're thinking about where you're going in life, it's important that you're thinking in terms of problems that you want to solve in society, right? If your vision is to go out and just make a lot of money, okay, I promise you, one, you probably are not going to hit it, right? Because you're going to have to do a lot of work to reach that vision, right? There's nothing wrong with making money. I would never tell you that, okay? And my hope is that whatever it is that you do, that you make a lot of money. Okay. Even if you're a nonprofit executive, I hope that you have good salaries so you can take care of your family, right? I want that for you, but that means you got to be bringing in, if you're nonprofit, that means you have to be bringing in finances. You can't pay yourself a salary if you're not out there fundraising and bringing the money in. So all that's important. But the only way that's going to sustain you long term is because you're driven by a vision, not by money. There's just something about it. Money just doesn't. For most people, it's not the biggest driver. And for people who it is their biggest driver, I've known enough people to do this. I haven't done any study or research, but I've known enough people to know this, that their lives they're empty and miserable because they're chasing after something that has no inherent value. Okay. It's not as, so you say, well, I get the cars, I get the house, I get the, but it's no fun with have all those things if everyone around you can't stand you, nobody wants to spend time with you. And I don't think it'd be any fun to have any of those things. And you're not making an impact in the world. You're not making the world a better place. You're not pushing the ball forward, right, with our global society. How fun could that be? I mean, at the end of the day, a house is a home, right? Or a house is a house. It's just walls. If you don't have people in there, if you don't get up every single day and say, I've got this beautiful home, I've got these nice cars, I've got this great vacation, but I also have a great family to go do it with. And once I'm done with this vacation, because I can't go on vacation forever, I get to go back to a job where I'm impacting society. That's a life that doesn't make sense to me. Okay. So vision is very important. So we'll talk about that here in a second. So this reading this week, it talks about, and I'm just going to kind of glaze over this because you're reading about it already, the importance of reflecting on your past. And I think journaling is a great tool to have for that. And I think at some point this semester, we're going to talk about that, the importance of journaling and what that looks like. Attending to the present, or have we already talked about journaling? Maybe we have. All these things start to run together for me and the classes, but if we haven't, we will. And if we have, then great, you already know more about it. Okay. So it's important to reflect on the past, and I would say reflect on your past, but also reflect on the past. What's happened in the world? What has shaped you? What's around you? What's in your context? Then we got to attend to the present. The book talks about the importance of attending to the present. Then we have to prospect the future. What's ahead of us? What's going out there? I would do, if I were you, I would do research as you're thinking about the vision for your life or for your company, for your team, what's happening out there in the world. If you're leading a team in a large organization, you should be finding out what the future holds and what the organization holds in the future. And you get that by communicating. You sit down with people and you start talking about them, what's ahead for us. And then you can plan for your team. You can communicate about that with your team. Express your passion when you're wanting to try to find your vision. So if this is about you individually, right, how you find your vision, is it comes through that you're reflecting on the past. How did you get to where you are? You're attending to the present. You're looking around you at the world around you. You're prospecting for the future. What's ahead of you? What are problems that you're trying to solve? And that's what we're going to talk about here in just a second. And then you express your passion, right? You begin to communicate out there what it is that you're trying to do, what problem you're trying to solve. And that's how you get other people on board with what you're trying to do, right? And then it goes over and talks about how to find a common person, and you listen deeply to others. You make it a cause for commitment. I do love this on page 111, and I underline this. It says, it goes back to everything that I just shared. There's more to work than making money. People want to follow a meaningful purpose, not just exchange their work for cash. People have a deep desire to make a difference. They want to know that they've done something on this earth, that there's a purpose to their existence. If you want to lead others, you must put principles. We talked about this, right? You must put principles and purpose ahead of everything else. The larger mission is what calls everyone. The best organizational leaders address this human motivation by communicating the long-term significance of the organization's work. And then the next paragraph says, meaning and purpose are vital to all generations at work. It's not just young people, not just old people. People have never stuck around very long when what they do is trivial and unimportant. I remember years ago, my first real job, my first job was working for a rescue mission. My friend's dad ran the rescue mission. It was our county rescue mission. And I was friends with his son, and we had a great relationship, still friends to this day. It's a very cool thing. And so he had this Christian camp that he wanted to send us to. It was up in Schenectady, not Schenectady, at Schroon Lake. That's the actual title. Yes, you can look it up. Schroon Lake, Schroon Lake, New York. And it was called the Word of Life Camp, a Word of Life Bible Camp or something like that. I didn't really care about the religious aspect of it. I just thought it's a chance to go out and to another state, to be at camp, be away from Indiana. I was, to travel and to be around a bunch of, other teenagers and beautiful girls. That's how my mind was thinking back then at the age of 13, 14. So we would, so what he did was he paid us. Now looking back on it, he couldn't do this legally today, but he'd pay us $15 a week, but then he paid for both of our camps. He paid for his son's camp and he paid for my camp. I think he obviously paid for his son's camp, but I think our family couldn't afford it. So he said, hey, I'll pay for your son, but he'll come and work all summer long. And then on top of that, I'll give him $15 a week. So I worked hard for that $15 a week. It was 40 hours. We worked from 8 to 5 every single day. Two of the greatest summers of my entire life. It was awesome. Okay. But I remember him talking to us about the importance of what we did, because we did a lot of really crappy work. I mean, literally. Okay. And I'm not going to go into stories about that, but we did a lot of, and sometimes it got a little bit old, and we were bailing clothes, and that's a whole nother thing. We were cleaning restrooms of these, people who didn't have a lot of manners, didn't have a lot of upkeep. They didn't keep their areas clean. We had to do a lot of that for them. We served lunch, we served dinner, we served breakfast. The whole day, our job was doing these odd jobs around the Grant County Rescue Mission. But I remember him talking to us about the importance of these people are trying to get back on their feet. They're homeless. They've struggled. At nighttime, they would have a nightly service there, a church service. And so the people who wanted to eat, you'd have to go to the church service. I think it was either first. Yeah, I think you had to go to the church service first. It was like a half hour, 45 minutes long, and then they could eat. And so obviously for him, he was a very religious Christian leader. And so it just meant a lot to him, right? The work that he did. And he shared that with us. After that job, I went and I was, I worked at a grocery store, and my job was up front, and I was a bag boy is what they called it. I don't know if they call them that anymore, but you would stand up at the front and you would bag people's groceries. You'd put it in their cart, and most often you would walk the cart out and you'd put it in their car for them. And you'd get some people who were nice, you get people who were rude, and it was all part of it. But I remember my bosses, Jim Rogers, but my favorite one was Gerald Rudisell. Gerald Rudisell, and he worked for the company at the time was called Marsh Supermarkets. They've closed down since then, or they've been bought out or something like that. But I remember he took such pride in his work, and he would walk us around, and especially as younger members, and he would explain why the aisles need to be clean, and why all the food needs to be up, pushed up front. Why when we bag groceries, there's a certain way we do it, right? So we can save the company money, but we also make it easy for the people. When we walk them out, a certain way that we walk them to their car, and we put certain things in first. And he was so passionate about it. And he was passionate about grocery because he said, hey, what we do here feeds families. It brings happiness and joy to people's faces. And you know what that means. If you remember as a kid, when your mom would bring the groceries in, there was something fun about going in there and seeing all the goodies that she brought in. She brought in the fruits, the vegetables, the meats, but then the chips and and the cereals, and how fun that was, right? And there's something about that. Most of our lives in some ways revolve around the grocery store, right? It's very important to us what we do. And he communicated that your job is not just a bag boy. Your job is to help bring food from this place, and you're a step in the process so that they can get it to their kitchen and feed their families, and how important that was. Christmas and Thanksgiving were big for him, and you talk about the importance of we need to make sure that this thing runs, and that this store, it does the right thing, and that everything's clean and everything's in its place, so people can get in here and get their stuff, and then get home and they can prepare their meals, their Thanksgiving meals or Christmas meals or Easter meals or 4th of July, whatever it was. He made it so important. I had another boss. I worked at another grocery store, Wayne Westgate. He worked for Payless Supermarket. Same attitude, right? He really cared about the people, and he'd be out there in a little tie. He'd have his tie on. He'd have his pants kind of pull up a little bit too high. He'd have his shirt tucked in, and he'd be out there, moving carts and these large pallets of food, and he'd be stocking and shelving. He'd be up in the office. He was just a phenomenal leader, and he was another one who's so passionate about we've got to help our families who come in here and they need the food that we have to offer. We want to help feed our community. That's our job. So that's much bigger than, hey, you're just a bag boy, bag those groceries, make sure they get in the car. They understood that, right? I've got to share something bigger. And so I came into my job every day with a sense of purpose. And then it would snow because it was back in Indiana. And I remember I'd have to help move the carts, and Gerald Rudisell would talk about the importance of moving these carts out of the way, right? Because they get in people's way in the parking lot, especially when it's snowing. So your job, JC's to get out there and make sure that this happens. And he just had a great way of sharing why everything was so important. And it made me want to show up and work for him as hard as I possibly could. I really enjoyed that job. It was one of my favorite jobs to have. I was lucky to have 2 to 3 of my first jobs be like that. Okay. So it's important that you're communicating that. I've got to move on here. Here's the thing that I want to share with you. Okay. Here's the big idea of our talk today. Yes, it's important to reflect on the past, attend to the present, prospect for the future, express your passion. He goes on to talk about listening to other people, right? Make it a cause for commitment. Look forward to times of rapid change. All that's important. But here's the biggest thing as you're developing the vision for yourself or for your company. Here's the major question you have to answer. And the question is simply this: what problem are you trying to solve? That's the key right there. As you're thinking about the vision for where you're going next, it can't just be about, hey, I just want to get this job, or I want to make this kind of money. Yes, some of that's important as well, right? Some of that is, we want to make sure we have a good salary. We want to make sure we can take care of our families and the people around us. But the most important question before you get to any of that is asking yourself, what problem are you trying to solve? That will keep you long-term in whatever field that you're going into, right? There's some kind of an issue. And let me tell you what, you will be good for you if you're not in a position of being the CEO or the owner of the company. You'll be great for the CEO or the owner because you'll always be thinking about that problem that you're trying to solve. For Gerald Rudisell, it was about, we want to make sure we get people fed, and we want to get food from here, good food from here, quality food from here, back into their homes. And we know that if we do that well, then they'll come back. And so the profit will work itself out if we do the small jobs right. So his biggest problem was, how do you make a great grocery store run? And that's everything that drove him. Right? From my first boss, who was the nonprofit, the Grant County Rescue Mission. His biggest thing was, how do we end homelessness? How do we, for him, he was in ministry. So it was, how do we bring these people to the message of hope? Right. And how do we feed their bellies, and how do we teach them and train them how to become better citizens of society and to overcome some of the things that they've had before? But all of it came back to that vision. Right. But it was a problem that they were trying to solve. I've got an article in front of me, and it just asked the question, what problem are you trying to solve? And here's what the article goes on to state. It was written by this gentleman by the name of Scott D. Clary. He's the host of the Success Story podcast, founder and CEO of Mini Patch. And here's what he has to say as he's talking about this. He says, many people kickstart their careers with a desire to start a business. That might be some of you. You want to start a business, you want to go into business, whatever it is. They aren't sure what exactly the business will cater to, but they know they want to be their own boss. They have an itch to scratch, and they're not sure how to go about it. Some of you came to Point Loma because of that right there. You're in a transition period. You're in a starting period. You're trying to figure out where you're going from here. Okay. Having a desire and knowing how to execute the two are very different things, though, which might explain why the startup failure rate is so high. Entrepreneurs take any idea and run with it, buying into the startup hype. And this happens a lot of times. People say, I want to be an entrepreneur, right? And they just go out and try to be an entrepreneur. But if they don't have that drive, that passion, that problem that they really want to solve, they can't stick it out through the hard times. And there are going to be hard times in building any kind of business. Okay. But here's the thing, the startup market is extremely saturated, and it is. Okay. And I got to tell you this, I work for a consulting firm, but I also have my own that I'm in the process of kind of starting up. And let me tell you, you've always got to be adjusting and learning and making changes because it is so saturated out there. Okay. So what he says is, you need to have a passion. It's an vital ingredient, but you also need the killer idea, one that not only sparks curiosity, but solves a problem for customers. I'm reading a great book right now, and I don't have it with me, so I can't show it to you, but I believe it's called Power Failure. And it's about what they're saying is the rise and the fall of GE, General Electric. Great company. Some of you probably have GE products in your home today. They're talking about the fall of it, but GE is still in existence. So as I read the book, if there's some things I need to share with you about it, I'll make sure to share it with you. I'm right now in the rise part of it. And it's very cool how GE got started. They literally created two different markets. The one market was for electricity, came from Thomas Edison. He was a part of the founding of, and there's a lot there, but there were companies that were formed and stuff, and they all came together to create GE. But Thomas Edison was he was one of the original board members, I believe, of GE. And so electricity, but they had to go out there. People weren't using it. They were using fire or whatever it was. So they had to go out there and create the market for it. It was a very cool thing. And then they created the industry and the market for it. And then they also created the industry and market for radio. Right. When they first joined, I think I read last night something about, they had 6,000 listeners, and within, a few, just like 3 or 4 years, it was up in the hundreds of thousands or in the low millions. I'm not sure what it was, but it's a very cool thing. Now, they started way back in the day. There wasn't electricity. There weren't radios. And so they got to start something, but they found problems to solve, or at least that's part of marketing, right? They made people realize without electricity, you're not going to be as successful as you want to be. Your home's not going to be well lit, so they're able to market it and get into people's homes, but they created an industry based on a problem. I have no light. Okay. Then they made it, then they created another one. People want entertainment. They want to hear what the news is. They want to know what's going on, hundreds of miles away from them. Imagine the world before radio, right? Before television, before phones. Today we get to, get on our phones and find out what's going on in Japan within a matter of seconds, right? But back in the day, it took months for that kind of information to travel, but the radio made the world a little bit smaller. Okay, so that's what they did. And in the process of it, they made a ton of money, obviously GE, right? So then he says this, why are we talking about this? And so the author goes on, he said, I started thinking about this after an incredible conversation with Christian Schaff. He's the founder and CEO of Uncharted Supply Company. I recommend you look this guy up. I just was spending some time. He looks like an incredible human being. It's a manufacturer of high quality survival systems and products made to empower people with the proper gear and education to guide them back to safety in an unanticipated emergency. Wow, that's a niche market right there, right? So he goes on to talk about this guy here, Christian Schaff, from being named Armed Forces Entertainer of the Year by the Pentagon for his time entertaining troops at some of the most dangerous bases in Iraq, to surviving a few life or death situations. He is a serial adventurer, athlete, entrepreneur, and philanthropist. Okay. On top of that, he's someone who successfully managed to solve a problem for customers with his survival equipment business. He gives them peace of mind knowing that in event of an emergency, they are covered. And he goes on to say this: our mission is to make the world a safer place. Okay. So again, he's solving a problem, right? Fear. If you watch any commercial out there, most commercials are based on fear. Fear that you're not going to have enough food, fear that you're not going to fit in, fear that cars sell this all the time, right? They show their braking system, right? Because they're getting ready to run over a mom and a kid or something like that, and the brakes all of a sudden hit, or someone's coming out of left field, or coming out of this other lane, and so their brakes and they've got the they've got the they've got the airbags, right? They've got this, and they've got all these systems in place to keep you safe. And so you're thinking, as the consumer, especially as you get kids and you get partner and spouse and all this families and that kind of stuff, you're thinking, well, I want to keep myself safe and my family safe, so I got to go buy this car, right? It's all based on fear. But it's a real thing for human beings. So a company needs to think about that and say, how do I provide safety? And that's what this company is doing. My belief is that every human on earth is going to face at least one emergency in their lifetime where they're probably going to need more than what they have today. Just reading that makes me want to go buy it, right? He is now tapped into fear, the fact that and I don't even know if he has data to back this up, but he's saying, hey, it's my belief that every human on earth is going to face at least one emergency. Now I'm thinking about, when's my next emergency? That's a genius right here. Okay. So then the article goes on to ask the questions: have you got a business idea in the works? If so, what problem are you trying to solve for your customers? You may be scratching your head, and that's okay. Then it talks about how, this article is going to help with that. I'm not going to go into all of this. He says a few other things here. He says Christian's problem and purpose. That goes back. Christian is solving a problem for his customers big time. I was surprised to hear in our interview just how quickly an innocent situation can turn into a full-blown emergency. And then the statistics say this: statistically, 95% of its survival situations are resolved within 72 hours. But gosh, if it's 15 below zero, or if it's 110 degrees, or if you have no food or water, you could die in 72 hours. Even that statement right there, I'm thinking, I got to go buy this. But the reality is, I don't know how I'm going to be in a situation where it's 15 below zero or 110 degrees, or I have no food or water. I mean, I'm not, but obviously he has a niche market. These are people that are out in the elements on a consistent basis, right? So it talks about that, identifying the customer problems, brainstorm your passions. And part of that goes back to what the book says too. You've got to, your passion has to connect with that problem. Okay. I am deeply, as your professor, deeply passionate about leadership. It's why I do what I do. Deeply passionate about leadership. I hear stories about people who have left organizations, great companies, because they've had horrible bosses. I've had horrible bosses before. I think it's a pandemic out there. It's an epidemic out there. It is unbelievable to me how many poor leaders are out there. It's the reason why I do what I do. So I didn't take this job as a professor so I could make a salary. I tell myself every day, I'm lucky to make a salary, and hopefully I'm helping to solve some problems out in the world. I also do consulting, where I get to go out there and travel in the marketplace and give presentations and trainings to leaders. And that's really important to me. Just this past week, I was up in Colorado, and I was giving a presentation to a group of senior leaders from the clerk of courts, right, all over the state of Colorado. They all came into Steamboat Springs, and I had a room of about 100 people there, and I was able to do some training for them. And that was important to me, because these people are then going to go out and lead other people. And I know for a fact that a lot of people are unhappy because of their leaders, right? So this is an issue. Now, if I'm able to make a ton of money off of it, great. Right? I'm grateful for that. Grateful for every gig, every opportunity to get out and speak and do it. But at the core of it, for me personally, is how do I solve the leadership crisis that is in our country, that's in our world? And so that's the work I'm giving myself to. And I've got big dreams for it, to build this training company that I've got. Either going to do it myself or with this partner. We had a great lunch last week, and we talked about, or this past week, and we talked about some of his visions for where he's going. And so I'm either going to join him on that, or I'm going to build my own company. I've got a dream, and I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I got a dream one day of building up these academies around the world for high school students, or middle school and high school students, so that they can go and they can get education, but not only get education, learn how to lead, learn how to be good leaders. And even if someone says, I don't ever want to be a CEO or a politician or president of the United States or whatever it is, they can say, hey, I know how to lead myself better. I'm so passionate about this. And that's the same kind of passion that I want you to have as well. So when we're thinking about vision, where we're going in life, it's about solving a problem. If you can match your passion with a problem out there in the world, I promise you this. It's something that will drive you for the rest of your life. You'll be excited about it. You'll be ready to move forward. So here's the question I have for you, okay? And I really want you to think about this, okay? This is reflective for you. In thinking about the vision you have for where you're going in life, what problem are you trying to solve? Have you considered that? Have you thought about that? Okay. What problem are you trying to solve? And so then I just want you to answer that. My vision is XYZ. Here's the problem I'm trying to solve. Right. My vision is this way. So for me, it would be, my vision is to teach here at Point Loma for many years, decades even, and build my consulting firm. Right. The problem I'm trying to solve is piss poor leaders. Okay. Poor leadership out there, insecure, micromanaging leaders that don't know how to empower other people. That's the problem. And organizations that don't know how to do that, right? I want to come alongside them for the rest of my life, these leaders, these teams, these organizations, and help them. Now, what's that for you? Okay. I plan to do XYZ. So maybe it could be, I plan to be a CEO. I plan to be a business owner. I plan to be an entrepreneur. I plan to be a great employee. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe you don't have any big designs on being running your own company or be CEO, but you want to move up to kind of middle management. Right. And, but in that, I would ask the question, what problem are you trying to solve? Okay. When you get that, the problem you're trying to solve, combined with your vision for where you're trying to get to, right? So your passion, right, combined with the problem, that's going to lead you to the vision of what you want to do. And for some of you, if you think about it, really think about it, what the problem is that you're trying to solve, and the passion you have for life. Some of you might realize that right now the work you're doing is not the work you're supposed to be doing. You need to be doing something else. Now, I'm not saying go out and quit your job today, but you might need to start planning for where you're going to go in life. So again, I want you to think about this. Don't just write some answer down. Just get done with the answer. The reason why we're doing this is because at the end of this class, this 1-unit class, hopefully you have an idea about what your purpose is. So your question needs to be, okay? So again, I intend to do XYZ, whatever XYZ is, and here is the problem I'm trying to solve. I hope this added some value to your life, to your leadership. I look forward to reading your answers, your responses, and I'll see you in the next podcast. Take care, everybody.